Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 from the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey since the very beginning. So thank you, Folgers. We appreciate you so very, very much. Also, big thank you to Justice Snicker, a.k.a. Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for his contribution of his time, his voice, and his music for the intro that you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music platforms. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror genre and does a fabulous job, but can also do pretty much any commission piece, especially pets. I think that's a real big bonus. I always like to mention that. I know, right? I know. So tonight we welcome back the return of a dear friend, very special guest, Lesley Mitchell-Clarke. It's been quite a while since she's been on. She's a very busy lady. She's going to be discussing different types of extraterrestrial races. She's a past life and ET contactee hypnotherapist, and she's worked with a lot of people doing a lot of different sessions, and she obviously can't get into who or all the specifics, but she does know quite a bit about who's more prevalent, why are they here, what do they want. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, so we're just going to wait on her to come in, and while we're doing that, we're going to say hello to Dolly. Incoming CME. Great. I know. Oh, wonderful.
That'll explain why I'm sleepy.
I know. Great. Hey, Dolly. Oh, my God. Everybody's chiming in.
Hello.
Hello, Duxie. Oh, my goodness. Okay. We've got Dolly. We've got Janie saying hi to Wayne and Dolly. Nice to see you here. And oh God, okay, moving down on the line. So, oh my goodness. There we go. Hello. Oh boy. Looking forward to this show. Just saying. There's just a lot of to do with respects to hypothesizing. Who's here? How long have they been here? Where do they come from?
Why?
What do they want? Yeah, So there's stuff that, obviously like we're pretty stereotypical, and I don't like to, I don't really like to think that that's all gloom and doom either,
No, but it's like criminal investigations. When you find out who, the next question is why.
Right.
We know who did it, but why'd you do it? Now we want it, like, once we know who is here, we want to know why they're all here.
Right. I agree with you. And without further ado, here's the lovely lady herself.
Hi. How are you?
Hello, Michelle. Hello, Amelia. How are you?
Hi, beautiful. How are you?
I am great. How are you two fabulous gals doing this fine evening?
Oh, well, it's fabulously. Now that you're here.
Freezing, yeah.
You look fabulous. That's all that matters.
Oh, my God.
That's all that matters. Exactly.
It's January, the 6th month in the year.
It is. But we are in Aquarius, and I'm being an Aquarius right smack dab in the middle of it. I can feel the energy shift out of the, shall I say, odious Capricorn. Not not great, Capricorn, for
Right.
me.
Mm.
Being a fixed air sign, those
Yes.
little goats really bother me.
I think they bother each other as well. I don't understand much about that. I mean, I love my horoscope and everything, and I'm the confused fish that's swimming in both directions, and it makes total sense if you know my life. But it's just, I don't understand how the in the sun and in the moon kind of thing in the house of that part. I don't understand.
Well, there's unfortunately a lot of mathematics to do
That's
with it.
probably why.
And
Yeah.
it's for a lot of people, for a lot of intuitive people, it's not necessarily an appealing discipline. Takes a certain kind of person. But now a lot of it is done, on the computer. I mean, back in the day, we just had big books called ephemerals, and they had
Mhm.
lists and lists and lists of planetary positions. And so it was all a very mechanical kind of deal, kind of an analog
Right.
process,
Right.
if you
Mhm.
will.
It's kind of like when we went to
But
the library and the little
the Dewey
what was
Decimal,
that? Yes.
I asked somebody the other day if they knew what the Dewey Decimal System was, and they just laughed at me. It's it,
What?
it's
Yeah.
it's gone. It's gone because
It is,
now
and yeah, they're
people just
antiques now.
so I have to wonder, in the great libraries, do they still, like the Library of Congress, do they still use that venerable old system? I
I
don't
wonder if
know.
they keep it
I
even
think they
in the
should.
room.
I think they should bring it back. Do you know how many young people don't even know what a negative is on like a film? I remember doing an event one time, and a woman came as a special guest because she captured the spirit, the image of a ghost, and
Ooh,
it was on a film,
yes,
and she wanted to show the negative along with the photo to show you can't
yes,
fudge this, right?
yes, yes.
And all these kids, and I mean kids, like even like teenagers, would come in. What is that? It's like we live in a digital world. I was like gobsmacked. I'm like, what?
No, but
What this is?
it should be
My
known
kids
if
don't
you're
know what this
working in a field that requires photography, you should know all the different mediums of it
But it's not
when
just
you're
that.
Well,
recording anything.
Yeah, but these are just people who came to the event to experience.
Oh,
We're talking Casa Loma, right? So,
oh yeah.
okay.
yeah, I used to be their representative, and used to do large events for them, and they would come in because the photo was captured like back in the 70s. So
Mm,
on a film camera. So she was trying to show it to all these young people, and they were just like,
they didn't get it. They
they
didn't
didn't
understand.
know.
No, no,
So
they didn't understand.
parents were like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed." So it's
Well, then
like,
I guess trying to talk to them about daguerreotypes would be out of the
yeah,
question.
probably.
So,
I don't
You just-
know.
yes.
I
yeah.
think the old school recording equipment is unbeatable, unmatched, and you can't question it.
There are
No.
still, speaking from my musician side, there are still
Yes.
plenty of musicians who are either returning or doing a kind of a wonderful sort of an analog thing, because it's warmer. It's a
Mhm.
It
warmer
is
sound,
warmer.
and it's not just digital information. And, so they're going back to the bare bones, as it were. But yeah, I mean, and then if you go by the stone tape theory, goodness knows what we could be playing out there if we had the right lasers and such.
Right.
I love it
The
though.
I
the sounds of the market in Pompeii. Who knows?
I
Oh, right,
wonder if you
right.
have the right scientific equipment, which somebody we know does,
Yes,
what you'd pick up there.
I think there actually has been some solid research into that, and you can, look into it. The stone tape theory is what this is generally,
Yes.
known about. But I do believe that at some university somewhere, they were able to get some sounds out of a grooved
Mhm.
a
Yes.
pot that was thousands of
Yes.
years old. I know that has happened. It just requires, it's all it's all binary. It's all numbers. It's all ones and
It is.
zeros.
It
Yeah.
is. I know we had a stonemason, Sean Williamson, on the show a couple times, and he was saying that he does a lot of repair work in some of the old cathedrals in
Oh.
throughout the UK and Europe, things like that. And and you can catch, because stone will resonate. It will retain the sound. And they were able, he was talking to us about how you can actually get sound from a lot of these stone structures,
Yeah.
especially the nice round ones.
Well,
Yeah.
there's
I believe
amazing
that's true.
acoustics in a cathedral.
Indeed.
Amazing
Indeed.
acoustics. And it's purposely built that way.
Mm.
And the material, the porous
Yeah.
material of brick and the natural materials that are used.
The marbles.
I have
yeah.
to feel if these types of materials are going to be far more resonant than, like synthetic stuff.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
know.
All the marble and the granite
Yeah.
and that. Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I
A
mean,
lot of it's sitting on shale.
there's a reason that they, who knows who dragged those incredible stones from hundreds of miles away and created Stonehenge. There's a
Yes.
there was a electromagnetic reason for what they were doing.
Yes.
And we don't understand it yet. We're so sometimes like, my goodness, we are so primitive, and we're just in the very dawn of even understanding, beginning to understand space time and
Mhm.
things of that nature. But I will say, I think that, and you've known me for years. I'm not a fearful conspiracy theorist person,
No.
Right.
but I do believe from the many dear people that I've regressed who were
Mhm.
involved either as draftees into the secret space program, but it exists. It's real. It's existed since Truman, and we do have incredible technology right now that could solve the world's hunger. They could, but the greed,
That would
greed.
be they'd lose
Yeah.
control though. The whole
Yeah, that's
system.
it. That's it. And it's
Yeah.
time. It's time for that I mean, they are so busted with so many people talking about their experiences.
Mm.
Decent people. I mean, Randy Kramer told me. I mean, before he did his last little spate of things for Gaia,
Mhm.
he had to take 3 lie detector tests, and he did, and he passed them all.
Wow.
I mean, this
That's
man has
impressive.
no motivation
Right.
to,
Telling
to
his story, essentially. Right.
fabricate this thing.
Yes.
And every time, and I've had him on the show, I've seen him in conferences. Every time that he does tell his story, although his lectures are not now always about that, he's very into his psionics training, but it's
Right.
always the same. And when people lie, they change stuff
Right.
because they can't remember really what they said. And that's where, what's his name got into so much trouble. The guy with the blue aliens. I'm not remembering his name
Yeah.
right now. He's been, unfortunately, I think, dare I say it, discredited to a certain degree.
Right. Right.
But
It is difficult. I mean, I think people also, it takes a lot for somebody to come out and tell stories about their experiences, but when you're going to that extra level of talking about space programs and so on, that makes it a lot harder because now you're throwing in the conspiracy thing.
you
Well, that
are.
and you're sticking the government under the bus.
It's
Sometimes
true.
people tell stories differently, not because they're lying, but because they might have been traumatized and taking it differently at a healing point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a
Any
tough
of
one.
that can happen. But remember that many of the people who have served in these esoteric alternative programs, believe that they are patriots. So, I'm in agreement. There's a few people that have said this. I'm not the only one to say that, but I think the easiest way to get very compelling disclosure would be for the government to issue a blanket pardon or a blanket, some type of blanket protection that
Right.
these veterans, and that's what they are. They're veterans who have no
Right.
rights.
Right.
They're veterans without a VA bill. They're veterans without health care. And many of them, complete these programs with various drug issues and mental health issues. So,
Yeah.
It's
and there
tough.
are,
Yeah.
trillions of dollars missing from the U.S. Treasury that nobody can account for. Not the
Right.
Republicans, not the Democrats, trillions of dollars that
Right.
have gone into our alternative high technologies. In fact, I'm convinced that at least a chunk of the time when people are having visual sightings, they're
Right.
seeing our own stuff,
Oh, I agree. I
you know.
agree with you 100% on that one. I
Maybe more
think
often than not, right, Michelle?
Very
I
possibly.
yeah, I do. I think so. I mean, what's interesting to me is everybody looks to the stars,
Mm.
for otherworldly beings, and a lot of times it's dimensional. A lot of times
Oh
it's just they're
yeah.
here with a thought. It's even a
Oh
portal.
yeah. Oh
Why
yeah.
are we so drawn to the stars? Is it conditioning or is there something else? Like,
It must be some elemental, excuse me, genetic understanding
mm,
of how the plant was seeded that all cultures share on some elemental level. It must be something that's in the etheric body, in the
yeah.
spiritual body, some kind of incredible knowledge that we actually all carry. We're just not allowing ourselves to remember who the boop we are.
Mhm.
Exactly. The
Did you
species with
like the way I
amnesia.
did that? I said I was
Right.
going to clean up my language on this show for you girls. I'm now beeping myself.
That's okay. You got the perfect timing, so we're good.
Yeah.
It's the FM thing. It's not the podcaster, it's the FM
Oh
part.
my goodness.
Yeah.
But but anyway, yeah, that's a big that is a huge question, but I think that there is a longing, but as Michelle brought up, I mean, what we're really starting to understand, and some people like Grant Cameron are really going heavily into this, that what we are
Mhm.
talking about here are ultradimensionals and interdimensional travel.
Yes.
And there's not always a craft involved. I think some of the beings that engage with us are able to manifest matter as they require it.
Mhm.
And there are portals, and there are portals
Mhm.
everywhere. We have geophysical portals that are natural, and I think also some that have been created or enlarged or used, in the superhighway.
Right.
Very like what is that? What is that area where they have? Oh my goodness, it's a very creepy area. They have it's something ranch, and they
Oh,
have
Skinwalker Ranch?
Skinwalker Ranch,
Mm,
where
Yes.
they have
Oh,
everything that they've got cattle mutilations, they've got,
yes.
everything.
they've got everything
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flying
going on.
witches. There
Yeah,
isn't anything
yes.
that hasn't touched that property.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
ancient peoples, the indigenous peoples know it.
Mhm.
They knew that. That's why they're not anxious to reclaim that property, I don't
Aren't
think.
they?
But
I
There's
believe what I understood, I don't know if I understood this correctly, that they don't mention it and their tribes are pointed in a different direction.
oh
They won't
yeah,
even
it's
put their homes
cursed.
in that energy
mm,
flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They believe it's cursed land. There was a tribal, battle war encounter, and the
Oh.
tribe that lost the right to that particular area of
mm,
land cursed it. And I mean, that would probably be some heavy duty
mm.
directed
Absolutely.
negative energy. So, but at least that's how they understand what's going on
It's
there,
the
that there's
entire
something.
Yes.
area, though.
It's the whole damn area.
It
I
is.
have to
They have one
wonder.
called oh,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go.
No,
I
I was
was
gonna
just
say
saying.
there's another one called Blind Frog, Ranch,
Ah,
not far from Skinwalker. It's down the whole mesa.
you have to wonder if there isn't some type of geophysical, I
That's
mean,
really close.
some kind of huge like quartz mega
Mm,
structure, or even, there's speculation that there is even some type of an active base.
yeah,
I hear so often about people being taken to in the scope of
yes,
these collaborative projects, taken to bases that are in the desert area, and you go
mhm,
underground and it's all there. So this is
yes,
a seems to be and I have to even wonder, I've also heard about this high speed train system, this
mhm,
magnetic train system that links major bases together
mhm.
under. And
I've heard that. I've
one
heard that.
one wonders, because it makes sense they wouldn't go halfway. Look, if they were doing something like that,
Mhm.
especially with the unlimited money, they wouldn't
Oh,
go they wouldn't go halfway.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, when you're looking, people come to you and they're like, okay, I need answers. What are you looking for with respects to my lab and a genuine contact? Like, what are the major differences?
Well,
Because a
I
lot of
think
people don't know.
I think the presence of trauma is far more common when someone has been involved in some of these, gray human collaborative programs.
Mhm.
Right.
That is where we tend to see more, more torturous equipment used for this, that, and the other. I have heard the worst things I've ever heard, I will have to say,
Wow.
is that kind of thing. Now, I don't automatically at all go looking for that because
No, of
it's
course not.
not in the scope of probably, I'm going to say it's less than 10%,
Interesting.
maybe, of
That's
the scope
actually
of,
good to hear.
yeah, it's not nearly as horrific as you, I mean, it's horrific enough, but
Yes.
most of the people that do come to see me are experiencers who have been lifelong experiencers who are having primarily positive or informative encounters with beings that are seemingly quite genetically related to us. In other words,
Mm.
there's a lot of, Pleiadians and Arcturians
Mhm.
and beings from the Lyran system who are,
Right.
loosely, I mean, these beings can easily pass on
Mhm.
the street. I don't know if it's as easy for them to breathe and do all those different things
Right.
that they do, but they certainly have engaged with us, and they're benevolent beings, and they seem to be watching or monitoring specific people, and it goes through family lines. And I almost have to wonder if, in some cases, they aren't monitoring their own family lines
Hmm.
and their own progeny, because certainly there has been contact going back to, um, if you wish to go that far, the
Mhm.
eras of Lemuria and or
Yes.
Mu and
Yes.
Atlantis, and
Yes.
that
Yes.
these super societies were in fact set up at a much earlier time than what we're talking about with the Anunnaki and beyond
Yes.
that, much, much deeper into antiquity.
Right.
And so I think, we're the hybrids, really.
Yeah.
We have nothing to be afraid of. We are the hybrids, and we have incredible skills that have been dormant simply because we have allowed ourselves to feel like lesser beings.
Right. Well, I think part of it is conditioning. From
Mhm.
the time you're, you're little, you go to school, you're conditioning as parents, I mean, as to how they were conditioned. I always say, like, with a species with amnesia,
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
with the fluoride,
Global amnesia,
calcification.
yep,
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
global
everything.
amnesia and calcification. But
Yes.
most of the people who come to me began having experiences when they were really little. I would say, and because language is limited, I'm going to say the age of 2 or 3. Sometimes they can recall sensations from a pre-verbal time, but that's when we start actually seeing them engage with beings and possibly going to have little encounters with other gifted children.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're taken on craft, and they play little games which then become other kinds of tutelage for psychometry and telekinetic thing, all kinds of
Yes.
stuff. The
Yes.
and this is a commonality. Like, I would ask some of my peeps, describe to me, like, the class. Let's say they're a little older now. They're 8 or 10 year old,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
again, they're having these experiences where they're in their physical bodies. They're not in their etheric bodies when they're young, it seems.
For
These are
really little
very
peeps.
these are very physical experiences in the beginning that later morph into what I would have to call some dynamic form of astral projection,
Yeah.
some kind of bilocation. That's probably a better word for it. But at any rate, so they will say, well, there are all kinds of kids here, and they're not afraid, and they'll describe that some of the kids look very human like them. Some of them obviously have gray ancestry. They have the large eyes and not much hair. There are so the little kids that are taken on board are
No prejudices.
and they're put into classes with children that we must assume are being raised on board ship.
Right.
Because possibly, I mean, these hybridized kids, they may or may not be able to exist in our earthly atmosphere. No way of knowing, but it seems to me that the ones that are more fragile or that can't do that probably spend their lives on board craft.
Right.
And there will be a teacher. There's always a teacher, and I heard about one gentleman has told me that he's had this teacher that he really, really liked, and she was a very beautiful sort of hybrid being of some sort with blonde hair, but very tall and thin, and they were having a class on reproduction. But very scientific. Nobody's laughing or freaking out. And I said, well, was it about, human reproduction? And he said, well, it's more about, how it works with DNA and, egg.
The technical side of things.
Yeah,
Right.
and so there you go. So that's good. So I wish my son had gone to that. Instead, he came home in shock because Mrs. Timney had put a condom on a banana.
Oh my God!
Wow.
So that was not under. I had to go into a whole nother kind of realm.
A banana. Wow.
That ended up the
I went to Catholic school. We didn't see anything.
No, we saw nothing. We had nuns in full drag. And do you remember? I was telling somebody about this. Talk about not remembering negatives photographs, but there was a big conference called Vatican II where we, with Pope Paul, and they were going to toss out all the old crapola. And I remember one day, all the nuns are in full drag. The next day, they're in polyester leisure suits.
Jesus.
It was that dramatic. So no more, a lot of nuns and priests just went casual at that point.
A lot changed after that.
A lot changed.
We're real people.
They were trying to not intimidate through their appearance and be more approachable.
Right.
Yes, very true. Oh, I see this question up here.
Amelia?
Let me put my glasses on because it's
We'll get it. Yeah.
Kathy Henley Little says, are most of these abductions, do they have RH negative blood?
A ridiculously high amount, a ridiculously high amount of experiencers, contactees, abductees, whatever you want to call them, do have RH negative blood. I myself have RH negative blood.
Some RH negative people aren't abducted.
Yeah.
No, but I think what it is now, it's important to remember that different blood types came into the human genome at different times.
No,
So O negative blood is in fact the oldest blood grouping. So it comes from some beings that did not have a relationship with any sort of evolution from simians.
No, I'm RH negative. That's why I made the joke. I said not all of us have been abducted.
Not all, but it is a trait of people who probably.
No, you're supposed to say no, Amelia. You've never been abducted. You're fine, honey. That was your cue.
Okay,
Leslie.
you're totally safe. You've never been abducted. Just having RH negative blood does not necessarily mean that you're going to be abducted.
I'm RH. I'm a contactee. I love it.
Yeah. So there you are. But the numbers are really. The numbers are really high. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Now I ask people. I didn't even used to. Now I always ask them. And and it's a super high percentage, right?
Do these people who are RH negative that are like up there in the masses upon masses, the high percentages of being abducted, or being abductees. Sorry, I need to change the
That's
way I
all
word
right.
that.
That's all right. Word it any way
No
you
coffee
want.
today. Like, it's
Very
killing me.
enthused,
It's
yes.
okay, dear. Just
Right.
whatever, however you want to say it. Well,
I love you. So I'm just wondering, are they being abducted by the same races?
Well, I think we have to think in terms of many organizations
Okay.
where there are, of the good, of the, positive beings, they collaborate with each other. I have rarely heard about anyone who's had a lot of experiences where there weren't a variety of beings that came into the picture. And some of them, now, for instance, the Greys, and I know we've talked about this before,
Oh,
but
that's okay. We have a lot of new listeners, so
okay,
go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
it's my feeling that many of the Greys are biologically engineered. They're more like cyborgs. They don't seem to have a soul presence. And even when, I will ask when I'm working in hypnosis, I will ask my client to uh, deliver a question to one of the Greys or to try to get some information. I'm always saying, you can talk to them, just do it with your mind. And there are rarely complex thoughts there.
Right.
Like they may get a sentence or a word, but it's very, very different from communicating with, a fully biological being, I think. So there's a lot of Greys that are involved, particularly when people are being taken physically, which, as I mentioned, is much more common for youthful people than it is as the experiencer learns more and becomes really an adept and begins working side by side with the ETs on various projects to help humanity. So there is a real positive aspect to all of this. It seems the goal is cooperation and helping us as we, roll around in the primordial slime, helping us to remember who we are, and all of the disciplines that people are involved with, the spiritual disciplines, yoga, there's a wide range of these things. They're all about remembering who you are, I believe.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that due to the fact that we have been suppressed so much and that our memories have pretty much been hijacked, I think they do come back in, and I think to a degree they're trying to undo a lot of
Yes,
that damage. But we've been
I think
conditioned
so.
to fear them, to
Yeah.
fear anything out of the norm.
Yes.
And God-fearing people, and I have to say, I'm just going to relay. I've said this before on the air, but when I was about 14, I'm very liberal-minded and very, being my awareness and I spidey senses, as I call them. Well, my aunt, who's very religious, became very concerned. My mother's like, "Oh, stop it, mother." And
Yeah.
parents saw things all the time. What's wrong with you? Anyway, they sent me to talk to the new hip priest on the block, right? Oh yeah, it was an experience. And this man was telling me he was actually pretty with it considering because he was younger. But
Uh-huh.
I'll tell you one thing that he mentioned, which we are living right now. He said the time will come where everything will be new age, and there will be talk of extraterrestrials, and everybody's going to want to be interested in extraterrestrials and UFOs, and they have to realize just how bad this is. And right off the bat, it was, of course, leaning to, Roman Catholicism, right? Because so you have to be
Yeah.
very careful because this is going to happen just before
Ooh.
everything else unfolds. And I'm
The
sitting there,
end times, the end
right.
times.
And I'm sitting there,
Yeah.
14, going, no.
No, no, no,
So,
no. But I do
so,
think you
yeah.
really hit the nail on the head when you said in some respect they're trying to undo either the damage that they did or that has been done.
Yes.
Because there's no question that our perception, our DNA has been messed with and some say truncated
Right.
so that it's very difficult. We can get past that aspect, but it requires, quite a bit of spiritual dedication and natural talent, which is what I believe the ETs are really interested in. They're looking for their descendants who
Mm.
have high PSI abilities
Mm,
and whom they can talk to
mhm,
telepathically if they want to.
mhm,
And a lot of a lot of stuff going on is very telepathic, and
mhm.
one thing I did also want to say when you asked about this collaboration of beings. I know that I don't know if you've ever had Daryl Anka on the show, but he channels a being called Bashar, who is a
I
hybrid.
I haven't, but yeah, I've explored doing
He's
that
got a very that is full trance channeling, which is something that we don't see all
very
that
often.
often.
Right.
But his being Bashar, it really lives in a massive mothership that is operated and peopled by a diverse group of
Mhm,
ETs. And by diverse, I'm saying there are insectoids who
mhm.
are, generally speaking, very benign and loving beings, believe it or
Really?
Right.
not. Yes, there are most of the insectoids. I mean, you hear bad stuff, and it's
About the
like
mantis,
everything.
yes.
There are good people and bad people,
Of
and it's
course.
it's the same
Yes.
thing. But in general, the mantis beings engage very openly, and have done on many ships. Now, this is interesting. They don't always show up themselves because wherever they emanate from, it's a tough trip, and maybe there's not a vortex. I don't know, but they are very skilled at projecting a kind of holographic image.
Right.
So some of the beings that we engage with it's like they're using Zoom. I mean,
Right.
it's like,
Yes.
why should I
Right.
bother getting on the Long Island Expressway when,
Mhm.
Right. I
I
could
can
just
just
do
do
it like
this?
this. Yes.
That's right.
Right,
So there
right.
is an aspect of that, and the insectoids seem to do that quite a bit, which I believe, I think Randy Kramer told me it's because of where their location is quite
Right.
distant. Now, there are also all kinds of reptilian beings, and it
Tell us
they
about those because that's a 50-50. Some people
yeah,
are I mean, and there's a difference between the reptilians and the draconians,
yes,
which people don't realize that there is a difference. But
yes.
some people say, "No, horrific experiences." Other people like beautiful experiences.
Hmm.
It's like everything we're talking about. It completely, but I would have to say that the negative experiences are in the tiny minority.
Right,
They've
right,
happened. I'm not going to tell people. I will never tell someone or argue with them about what they experienced,
right,
No.
because anything is possible in this massive matrix. Anything's possible.
right.
But I do know, for a fact that we even have treaties with various reptilian groups.
Hmm.
And we may even have some of that type of DNA in us as well.
I
I
believe we do.
I think we
Absolutely.
do. I think, but I
Yes.
think we are extremely squeamish about anything that is not mammalian in
I think
origin.
reptilians are the closest looking to anything demonic, and that could be why as well.
Yeah, and maybe seeing them has even inspired the idea
Mm,
of the devil represented in that way.
Mm,
mhm,
true.
It's
Yeah.
possible, but
mhm.
they look scary, but they to us, but just like everything else, there are planets of them that are wonderful. And as
Mhm.
you said, the Dracos, that's something else. I believe they're shapeshifters, and that's another kind of thing that is very frightening. And they're ancient
Or
again, they're ancient in the extreme.
or
Why are they
could it be that they're just projecting what they want us
Yes,
to
because
see?
they're psionic masters.
Yeah, I would think that would be a little bit easier
Yeah,
than the physical shapeshift per
they're
se, and I'll
exactly.
pretend to understand,
Yeah.
or
are th-
what
is
they
that
do,
the
what they can't do.
race sorry. Is that the race that we believe was here before us, or the insectoids?
I think that the reptilians go very far back to the origins of humanity. There have been so many ancient encounters with them, and of course,
Mhm.
also, if you just look at the, hieratics and the art in Mesoamerica and actually all over the world, Thailand,
Mm,
there
Yeah.
are a lot of reptilian beings that seem to be pictorialized.
Mhm.
and are part of, not in a frightening way,
No,
but they're
no,
part
no.
of the mythology or the, so who knows? I mean, there are even I've heard some experiencers talk about aquatic beings,
Yes.
and here
Yes.
we're talking about, essentially mermaids and
Yes.
aquatic beings who apparently were a part, a very integral part. I know there's a being called Oannes, who was a half fish, half man, who was deified as a god
Mhm.
in Greek times. But I was doing a past life regression once, and someone went way back to Egypt when it was a colony of Atlantis before, there were hybrid pharaohs, etc. And this person said that the entire area where the Sphinx is, and that there was another Sphinx next to it, was like a huge reflecting pond, a big water place that was lush and wonderful, and the aquatic beings could be there and live there.
It would make sense if they were part of Atlantis.
Yeah.
It
I
would.
believe they were. I
Yeah.
believe they're just another type of being, and that there are still aquatic beings that
Mhm.
we engage with.
Mhm.
Now, one type of being that I've heard I've heard about an awful lot when I'm working with someone and bringing them back to their childhood experiences, um, is a type of being. I think it might be a type of a gray in the way its structure is, but it has brown skin, almost like a
I've heard of them.
reptilian, and
Yes,
um,
I've
and
heard of them.
um, the kids call them sometimes the brown doctors. And
Mm.
in other information that I got when I was able to have a client engage in conversation with one of these beings, they are the master geneticists of our quadrant of the universe. So
Wow.
they are often involved with nothing painful or bad, but just looking at kids and testing them and all, benign kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But they go to great pains to make sure that the kids don't see them.
Oh,
They wear, like what you would call commonly like a monk-like cassock with a
yeah,
hood,
yeah,
that's part of their normal, dress, and they don't want to frighten anyone, and they're really concerned about it. So if they're walking a child, 10 or 12, down the hall, there'll be one on either side, and they stay out of the periphery at all times. And they probably use other technology too, to not
right,
be
right.
a memory suppression, possibly, who knows. But they are the geneticists, the expert geneticists of
Mm,
our corner of the universe. And that's not what I would normally think. I would have thought,
right,
oh, somebody beautiful and some kind of lyran, these are the people that really have it. Well,
right, right.
apparently not. These guys are the experts.
Wow, that's fascinating.
The brown doctors.
Yeah. So you say memory suppression. I mean, you hear about that more from a military level. Why
Mm.
would these beings want to suppress memories when they're trying to wake you up at the same time? This is a
Uh,
pretty common question, so I want to pose it.
yes, yes. And I've certainly spent a lot of time thinking about that very thing. The only thing that I can say that seems to make sense is I think they are really trying to not mess with our day-to-day third density lives.
Mm,
And they are, in many cases, trying to protect us
mhm.
from processing an experience that might be too much for us to handle. But
Right,
my personal belief is there are no memory blocks that work forever.
right.
And in fact, the things that the government has done, the
Mhm.
memory blocks that they have devised and reverse engineered. I heard someone very high up in the space program say, "Well, we only made them to work for 20 years. That's what we did," which is the reason I'm sure that I see so many people come to me who are starting to have memories come back in midlife.
Right.
That's
That makes perfect sense.
I think there can be no other reason, and and we can dissolve these memory blocks.
Mhm.
The only thing that can keep them from not dissolving is if the client or the hypnotic subject is in a fearful state.
Right.
And if I sense any kind of fears that are not controllable, I stop the whole process right there.
Right.
Because someone has to be ready, and I won't. It's like forcing open a flower or something.
Mhm.
I won't do that until the person is ready, and that does happen. Where
Mhm.
people come to see me, I always do if I'm going to do a regression process of any kind, I do a big thorough intake, as you know, but I will often do a little session just to see. I'll have them, come to my space, or for working on Zoom, I'll do a little session to see how receptive they are to the hypnotic process. And that will really tell me everything that I
Out like
need
a
to
light.
know. Yeah,
Does
I
that tell
know.
you? What does that tell you? I'm out like a light.
Yeah.
I've been hypnotized before for therapy, so I'm just curious. I go out so fast. I can fall out watching a movie with
Yes.
old
I'm opposite.
Yes.
watch.
It's so
Like
hard
I'm
to
like this, and
hypnotize
I'm
me.
like,
I go in and
boom.
I want to be, and I'm aware of everything. That's
Yeah.
fully aware of everything. I'm just like,
You are aware when you're under.
and I'm just
though.
like,
yeah.
sure. I don't even think this is working.
Well, it doesn't feel obviously how you learn to do this is you let
Yeah.
all the students hypnose you all the time, all
Right.
day.
Oh my gosh! So you get really good sleep.
I've been through that, but
Yeah. I'm awake to the whole darn thing, but it's
Yeah.
just like, I'm not saying information doesn't come out. I'm just aware.
It's very
of it.
relaxing.
people are naturally comfortable in different stages of
Mm.
trance, and as long as I can get eye lock, which means if I can convince you that you can't open your eyes, as long as I can do that,
Right.
that's my little litmus test. Then
Right.
I can go into the rest of it. Now, some people in regression are, it seems as if they're very, very conscious, but they're not. They're
Right.
in an altered state, but the information is just like flowing out.
Right.
Some people are really, I should say, slow verbal processors. So I will ask a question or whatever it is I'm doing, and then there will be a big, like a big lag between when they respond. Now, that's the hardest thing for me to work with,
Right.
because I don't want to interrupt, I don't want to rush them, and yet we have to get through a process.
Right.
So, but the way people, move through hypnosis is highly individual, and just because it feels like you're awake doesn't mean you're
Doesn't mean
not
you
in there.
are.
Yeah, in
Right.
fact, we
Right.
there's another type of technique that I use often, especially for any kind of addictive issue, just in my regular
Yes. Yes.
hypnotic life, and that's neurolinguistic programming. And sometimes we even call it waking hypnosis, because the person doesn't have to be in what we would call a typical trance for it to work. So I use a lot of that with kids too,
Right.
because it's very
Right.
hard to get them to settle down sometimes.
They don't understand it. I think for
No.
me, being a medium and a remote viewer, that I pass out easily because I'm so used to
You
going
go
to
there.
a different place.
Yeah, you know exactly where to go. So
I'm
probably
a dream client, Lesley. Like I'm out the minute you start. By 3, I'm like gone. Try
Yeah.
to put
I'm
me
the
under
opposite. I'm
anesthetic,
like,
and I'm wide
nope.
awake.
Do it again. Can you get this,
Well,
Amelia?
I'm like, sure,
either way is
I'll go there
okay.
for you.
Either
Hi.
way is okay. Believe
Yeah.
me, it's really okay. You just know where to go, and you choose
I
to go
trust
there.
it too. I
Whereas,
trust it.
I think that Michelle, just by knowing her, I think that she is a more analytical person, and she is, and doesn't
I
want to
want
miss
it
out,
though.
and doesn't want to miss out. Well, you get it. You can be
We'll have to hypnotize you through me.
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah.
You use
For
your
me, I'm
both.
just like, no, do it. I want to go on to it. Just, I don't know. But,
Our
here's
dear
a question.
friend Sherry,
Okay. What is Sherry
she's a
going to
dear
ask
friend.
me?
She asks, do you
Okay.
feel that
Oh.
going through hypnosis as an abductee helps trauma or make it worse? I hope you're okay, honey.
Oh. Well, what I will say about that is knowledge is power.
Right.
And I think that it's important to remember that by the time someone comes to me and I am in school to finally be certified as a psychotherapist, but I'm a hypnotherapist. I don't have the medical credentials to do a lot of stuff that
Right.
a doctor would do. So many times by the time someone sees me, they have exhausted what I would call traditional mental health protocols. They've probably seen psychologists. They may have even had some, treatment for like some ketamine treatment for depression. I mean, who knows? They've
Yeah.
tried usually everything, but these people have sleep disturbances. They have dreams that are not really dreams, but they're recollections.
Mm.
They may still be having active physical experiences. They may wake up with marks on their body and bruises that don't make any sense. So many times these dear people have become so discouraged that they really believe that they're losing their minds.
Mm-hmm.
They really do. And so the great beauty, I have to call it beauty because the beauty of it's a beauty of human transformation. When we get in there and they understand that they are a very special person, and sometimes they even remember that their siblings have been taken along with them,
Mm.
or maybe their grandma, that everything always comes out, but then it's put into perspective and they think, well, I'm just special and I can integrate this into my life. The idea is um, to really stimulate the idea that they are very sane people, and fact, probably more sane than other people because of what they are learning and doing, and that it's okay to integrate these experiences into your life in a healthy way. And to me, I have a lot of, there are a lot of techniques for releasing trauma if people have had a traumatic experience. And as I said, it's not common, but it has happened.
Mm-hmm.
I have all the same kind of techniques that I use for people, like police officers with PTSD, the same type of techniques that I use for relieving that type of trauma, I use.
Right.
Within the parameters of
Mhm.
my training and my licensing.
Right.
And there are some marvelous techniques. There's a new technique called EMDR, which has to do with rapid eye movement. It is incredible for dissolving trauma. So
Mhm.
I think the future of mental health may be more related to these new therapy techniques rather than just the use of medications. I mean, it's I am in fit don't I'm not an anti-medication person by any means, but
Mhm.
the
It's just
fact
another technique,
yeah, and the
basically.
fact is that
Yeah.
50% of the people who are taking antidepressant medication are getting absolutely no value from it. So we have to rethink the whole thing about the serotonin uptake inhibitors, and it was a step, but I think we have to go beyond that because it is not a panacea for
Mhm.
everybody,
Mhm.
Oh, for
right?
depression, no.
Yeah, it is not. And we have other techniques that are really heralding a new future that will be less narcotic involved,
Mhm.
less
Mhm.
psychotropic drugs, more interesting therapies based on what we know about how the brain works.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
I have both. I suffer from depression seasonally,
Mhm.
and I always suffer from anxiety. And just recently I had to up my meds, and I was very disappointed because I worked so hard to lower them.
Mhm.
But when I
Mhm.
look at what dosage it's at, I'm like, this is a joke. Like, I can handle it at this point where I couldn't so many years ago. And I think people have to know themselves as well. when they're going through it. But I agree with you that the antidepressant way, and I'm not going to say it in a way that we get pulled, because I'm not a doctor and I'm not giving medical advice. I'm speaking from my own opinion.
Yeah.
That it's not always the right way to go.
Not
it doesn't
for
work
everybody.
for everybody. Some people I found that it was too numbing for me.
Some people feel very mid-rangey on that.
Like,
it's that's a typical complaint. So, not only, so it's a thing that doctors will use because it can be amazingly helpful. It can save people's lives.
Absolutely, especially if you're at the point where you're not functioning and you're not moving. You do need that.
Well, people have stopped making serotonin because of stress and other factors. They've stopped. So what we do in hypnotherapy and other types of therapy is we teach people how to release their own endorphins. And that actually works amazingly well. We teach people how to create on demand a endorphin release, and we also teach them how to disrupt negative neural pathways, which is which are the perfect places. Neural pathways are created by fear and anxiety, and we can disrupt those neural pathways.
That's awesome.
And create new neural pathways, literally replace the bad feelings with the good feelings. I mean, it's all possible, because the human mind and the human psyche are absolutely amazing. I am always surprised, never bored, and I can't think of anything more fascinating than what I do.
It's amazing.
It is. It's very interesting, and I'd like to see more people embrace it a little bit. I can see why people have a certain fear. People fear the unknown. Here's another one from Dolly.
Hi, Dolly. How are you?
Hello.
Dolly asks, have you ever met someone who is aware psychically at all times?
Oh, yeah. I have. I've met some people who are incredibly psychic and also hyper vigilant. Kind of a bad duo combo thing there. So because they are hyper aware all the time. But many times those individuals do have issues with anxiety because they're so open, and the nervous system can only take so much. You can only run so much current, electricity through the neural network. And sometimes.
Can you write that down for my doctor?
It's like data on Star Trek. You can't overload the neural network.
It's a lot.
It's
a lot. It's a lot.
And it will, and it does. People get overwhelmed. They do.
We get burnt out.
We live in a very complex society, and of course, in the past, people certainly had worries and concerns, but there were fewer of them. There was, fire, eat, food. I mean, it was, but.
Different times.
We have a million concerns,
Right.
Well, we got Dr. Google too, which doesn't work.
Yeah, well, it's there you go. But at least so that's kind of what I do. I have never had an experience where relieving trauma and guiding with love and protection the person through their past experiences, and then helping them to amalgamate those experiences into their life. I have never seen anything but a much happier person.
Right. I love that. I love that. So I'll back up a little bit as far as we got talking about people coming forward, whistleblowers, things of that nature. Why now? Do you think that this is all coming to light? I mean, many people suspect what's going on out there, but we don't know for sure.
Indeed.
So you have people risking their lives. You have people who are just like, no, this is going on, and this is not necessarily ET, but yet ET will work in conjunction with.
Oh yeah, and some ETs are not nearly as morally concerned as others.
Exactly.
It's so the I think we have to bear in mind that many of the whistleblowers now are extremely elderly, and are now, there have been a lot of what I call, deathbed confessions, many of them in the last while. So I think finally these individuals feel more guilt about not being honest with the American people than they do worry for their, for their own safety. They're past caring. They don't give a boop anymore. So, but I think that's part of it. But to really get to the nitty gritty, I think we have to look back to the 1950s, just the post-war period, and look at the Roswell crash, which was not one crash, but 3 crashes. Bodies and beings were recovered.
And it seems to me when things changed.
That was it. That's when things did change. And that was the beginning of a long relationship between those particular types of grays from the Zeta Reticulite system. I mean, the guys that examined Betty and Barney Hill, those were the Zeta Reticulite, Zetas. So they made a deal with Truman at the time. It's called the Truman Agreement, and said, well, you know what? We're going to give you some tech that you can handle, that, is going to really improve your technology, your lives, blah, blah, blah. And in exchange, we are having, really ridiculous fertility problems. We can't reproduce. And can we just examine a few of your people? Not very many, just examine a few of your people. Yeah, right? So that, and nothing was
in one state.
I know. And nothing was said. Nothing was said about taking sperm and ova and fertilizing and using women as incubator. Nothing was said about any of that kind of horror show that happened. But that was a direct result of Truman's Agreement and what they did with this tech, which involved things like fiber optics, integrated circuits, Velcro, of course. All of this tech was parceled out to different firms like the Skunk Works and the Hughes operate. It was all parceled out and was being reverse engineered under what they called the Department of Foreign Technology. Well, it was foreign, all right. I think to this day, probably most of the people who worked on the reverse engineering of those things, and it was also the tin that was flexible and resumed its position, all of that kind of stuff. I think they thought they were dealing with tech from the USSR, because that was the beginning of the Cold War. I don't think those people ever had any idea that the Hughes Skunk Works had alien tech. But if anyone out there is really interested in this particular time period in our history, and really, the ground zero of how we perceive ET contact, Colonel Philip Corso wrote a wonderful book. He's now passed, but it was called The Day After Roswell. And if you're interested in that time, that book, Colonel Corso can explain it a lot better than I can, but that's the little thumbnail version. So the government, as far as we know, is still dealing with Zeta Reticulites. They turn up all the time in military and humanoid collaborative projects, shall we say.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, we're in the age of disclosure, and of course, the military or the United States are just like, no, we don't think we want to do it. And it's, to my knowledge, are the only country that really hasn't.
Oh yeah.
Everybody else has come forward. So it
Yeah,
tells you that
yeah.
there's definitely, I'm sure I'm going to have their reasons, but I think it's great that people are coming forward. And I think also with hypnosis, people are, if they can let go of the fear, it helps them that way. But I think it also helps to get the story out. Because Lisa was on the show, Lisa Savoy.
Oh, Lisa. Yes.
And what she was on, and it really felt therapeutic.
Oh, yeah.
Her just retelling her story.
Yeah.
So
Is another, lifelong experiencer with more experiences that I could shake a stick at. I worked with her a lot, and got her to the point where she was able to even to write about her experiences.
right.
And it's she's had quite quite a situation. I mean, she has a very special attachment to one particular ET that she calls Angie because she thought she looked like an angel
Right.
when she first came to take her when she was a little girl. And
Yeah.
in some ways, she feels more emotionally attached to Angie and some
Mhm.
of the people that she engages than she does to her own physical family on planet
Interesting.
Earth. Yeah,
Understood. Understandable.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's interesting. Tamara has a question. Amelia?
Yes.
Sure. Hi, Tamara. Tamara asked, do you not think the internet and cell phone was a turning point in the government's having to admit UFOs?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, baby. Boy, do I ever. I mean, there's not a boop thing that they can do because we are operating on alternative media and dispensing information. Now, certainly, you have to be probably selective, but absolutely the ability to get the information out for people to engage and talk in forums, and I mean,
Mhm.
it's everywhere.
Internationally. Yeah.
Internationally, no more boundaries, no boundaries of country.
Mhm.
I think it's absolutely magnificent. I also think that every advancing culture has probably passed through some stage of technology like this, like
Mhm.
just shy of telepathy. I mean, we can practically communicate at the speed of thought.
Right.
So it's just shy of that. I think of it as psychic training wheels that we're
Right.
on right now. But I think that there is enough evidence that supports that technology. The Anunnaki had computers, they had
Mhm.
integrated circuits, they had programs, EMs they called them. So
Mhm.
there's no question that advanced societies have reached a technology point, and it destroyed some of them, but not all of them. And
Mhm.
maybe many of us have had past lives in some of these disastrous things that happen to other civilizations, and
Mhm.
we are here to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Mhm.
Because you can have both. You can have beautiful technology that doesn't harm the earth, and
Yes.
you can be grounded in the earth and have real values. And
Mhm.
it's there's you don't have to go crazy with
Mm.
the tech and the greed.
Right.
You just don't,
But they
you know?
will. What do you make of the apocalyptic dreams, in your opinion? Because have you regressed a lot of people who have these apocalyptic dreams? Some people believe
Mm.
this is when we all left Mars, because there's a lot of red sand, that's like disasters, survival.
People have had experiences like that. I
Right.
mean, there was a point where Mars just had its atmosphere ripped away, and it was a colony. So yes, I would have to say people have sometimes even held a lot of trauma about passing through an incredible apocalyptic disaster.
I've heard that a few
Anyone who
times.
survived it or was
Yeah.
killed by it. I mean, I have, frankly, in past life regression, it's something that does come up. And it's not only apocalyptic, but people will go back to, horrendous wars and, just horrendous stuff that we have done to each other.
Mhm.
But yes, I would have to say that extraterrestrial disasters are things that have certainly been recalled. I mean,
Right.
there are people that come in, and once I get them in, they will tell me that their real home is this other planet, that
Right.
they chose to come here and be here now in a physical body because of the amazing things that are going to happen.
Mhm.
It's like the grand experiment.
Right.
And but their heart and their soul and their desire and some people cry in the chair from homesickness.
Mm.
This is something that is not unusual,
I get
because
that just from thinking of other lives, feeling so I find a
oh,
lot of experiences feel completely out of place here. They
they
don't
do.
belong in this time, they don't belong in this
Yeah.
space, they know something's not right. They have a sense of mourning
Yeah,
and
they do.
longing, and
Yeah.
they don't know where it comes from. It took me a long time to cope with that feeling, that void.
Yes,
Mm.
it is a real thing, and there's an awful lot of longing for home, for love that is pure, and for people who don't hurt each other, and it's
Mm.
these are very sensitive people and sensitive
In a
souls who
very
are
harsh
experiencing,
place.
and they're in a harsh place. I call it the cruel
Yes.
school.
Gee, they
This is
make
the
me
Yeah.
cruel
cry.
school. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
this is a harsh, cruel school, but
Mhm.
we're here to help clean up the mess. We're here to help our fellow man
Mhm.
and help a lot of dear souls
Mhm.
step into their own light. And
Right.
I believe it will happen. We may not see it significantly in our lifetime, but things are definitely on the move.
Right.
And there will be complete exposure of what our governments have done.
Mm.
That will happen. And an interesting thing I think about, even the Pope, has, and this is a big deal, even the Pope has come out and said that beings on other planets are simply another part of God's creation, and in no way um, uh, are a threat to
Mhm.
our spiritual beliefs.
Mhm.
And he's
Well,
come out and said that. And
they've all
But he
been
should, because how, you talk about the creator and source being all, creating all, but so many people limit themselves to this one little planet.
oh
It's just
yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, if you're a source, you're everything. You would create everything. If that's the belief system, then don't limit it, like
I
go for
yeah.
think it's
broke.
out of fear that they don't look at it.
Well,
Sure.
and remember, a lot of people who are devoutly following a religion are not necessarily educated. And we've got, our man, the Pope, is he's an astronomer.
Right.
Yeah.
That he's one of the is he a Paulist, or he's from oh golly. Anyway, he's a very, very educated man. Now, a while ago, and I don't know if you gals saw anything about this, I have been hard pressed to find evidence of it ever since I saw a story online, I believe I saw.
Mm.
Apparently they were not long ago, they were doing some renovations at the Vatican, and discovered in burial, they discovered a number of bodies that were clearly not human.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and then we heard nothing about
Mhm.
it.
I
It
didn't hear
was just
anything about this.
it was
Wow.
this was years ago too. It was completely if it
Before
happened,
Francis, like that far back, Leslie? Before
It was before Pope
Pope
Francis.
Francis.
Mm.
It was in the time of Pope John Paul, actually, I
No, it would have
believe.
been hidden. Yeah.
Yeah, so it came out, and then was hidden, but my feeling is that at the Vatican, um, there there is a lot more going on than
Mhm.
we may have
Well,
thought.
there's a reason why it's a city that's
They have
it's a
alien skulls
country.
and such.
Mhm,
It's
They
its
do.
own country. People don't
Yeah.
mhm,
realize that. They're
mhm.
like, the
Mm.
Vatican's not a country. Yeah, it is. Google search
Yeah,
it. And it
Mhm.
also has its own police force. They lock their gates. I
yeah,
think it's about 10 o'clock at night, so you
yeah,
can't enter the city.
that's right.
Mhm.
They do not abide by the Italian law. It's completely
No,
different.
they're autonomous. They're a
Yeah.
principality like Monaco. They are,
Yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's kind of what they're like. But yes,
Yeah.
and I think that they have been involved. I think they've been involved with ETs since the very beginning.
Well, don't they
Absolutely,
Since
have
and they
that
the,
have
giant
evidence of that.
telescope?
You can find
oh
it. It's out
yeah,
there. They
oh yeah,
definitely have it.
Well, they
So,
yeah,
also, and then you have to remember the great artists that, came from there as well, that had put them in their artwork and
oh,
Da Vinci.
played a little bit with that.
Da
they're in a lot
Vinci's
of
just one
artwork.
of them. Yeah.
Da
Yeah,
Vinci
yeah,
was huge on the cosmos. Da Vinci was huge, but they
yeah.
all the artists of that time. You have to remember too, when people say, "Oh, how is that possible?" Think about the population, how small it was there then.
Mhm,
Think
mhm.
about how much time they had on their hands. Okay, time to notice things. Because that's a big one. Michelle
Just-
talks about
just-
that all the time, just with
just
spirits.
Look around the world. I mean, hieroglyphs, petroglyphs, ancient structures, monuments, out of place artifacts. I
All over
could
the
go on
place.
and on and on and on. You can't. There is no discounting it.
No.
The Vatican pumps a lot of money into astrology,
Oh,
hence the
yeah.
telescope Lucifer.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of money. It's endless.
Mhm.
So they can do a lot of research. They don't have to rely on funding. It's
No.
all there.
That's right.
So literally, the sky's the limit for real.
Well,
but
they've been in
Lucifer
touch.
originally, he's the giver of light. That's why they named
Yeah,
him.
it's
right.
That's why they
the-
named it Lucifer.
The bringer of
Yeah.
light. Yeah, we just
Yeah.
react to that name, unfortunately.
No, for
because
sure,
of-
for sure.
But it's
Yeah.
it's just a bringer of light.
Yeah, that's right.
So what was I going to say? Some other thing about the Pope. Well, actually, again, we're talking about when you talk about the Vatican, you're talking about the beginning of the Christian Church. There is so much. What was the word? There's so much pagan stuff in there. That's how ancient it
course.
is. In fact, you'd be interested in this, you guys. There, communion as we know it, communion, has its origins in an Egyptian festival, an Egyptian ceremony, very serious,
That's right.
where they made little cookies that looked like the body parts of Osiris, little
See?
hands, little feet,
Right.
little heads, and you would have a blessing and you would take one of these little pieces of Osiris's body and eat it.
That's right. That's
So
right.
that
Cookies
later
over that pressed paper that we get.
It
Do
goes-
not
it goes
come
back
at
to
me. I
Atlantis.
am Roman Catholic. Do not come at
It goes
me.
back to Atlantis.
yes.
yeah, it goes
actually.
way back.
Communion.
So
Let's face it, the church, every time they amalgamated everything. Every time they would come into a region, take it over, they would take parts of that. It was a good way of integrating the cultures. But I mean, you just walk up to the Vatican and then you just get to see, like things you would not expect to see there, like
it's
Molech. For
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
let's talk about Molech.
Yeah,
Let's talk
yeah.
about the auditorium, which is the head of a serpent, which people
Yeah.
don't realize serpent means knowledge.
Again, we're talking about that
Right, like-
iconography of the
Yeah.
reptilian, which sometimes means DNA, as in the caduceus, the
That's right.
medical symbol with DNA scrolling on the staff. It's all there to be seen.
But it also means knowledge.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like how much information has just been misinterpreted, or they just didn't. Let's face it, you had to be educated. Not everybody could read, so you had to
Well,
rely
even
on
the, even
people.
the
Most
swastika
people who
was
followed the
crazy.
Bible way back when
Mhm.
couldn't read it.
Well, that's true. And the Bible, you want to talk about an editing mess. I mean, it's been translated, retranslated,
missed-
through books
Lost in
out, through
translation.
books in, completely lost in translation.
Well, when
I mean,
people say to me, "Have you ever read the Bible?" I'm like, "Which one?
Which
Yeah.
one? Yeah.
Which
Well,
one?"
right.
Because I
Yeah.
went to school; it was Old Testament. So, which one are you asking? Because I
That's
have no
true.
clue what's in the new one.
Mhm.
I
Well,
own
actually-
one, but I've never read it.
The most accurate, I think, Old Testament history comes from the Holy Quran, because it was passed as an oral tradition without edits or rewrites. So the
Mhm.
thing that's kind of fascinating about that is you can look at a story that maybe in our Christian Old Testament, is like 2 lines, and the version in the Quran really gives like the details.
Right.
And so it's probably far more accurate, and the Torah
But
being
it's older
more
than
accurate.
Christianity as well.
Oh yeah.
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 Like people don't realize Christianity is relatively new on the grand scheme of not everything's a religion. It's a way of life as well. But I mean, it's a baby.
Yeah.
300 AD. I mean, you have traditions that go back way further.
Oh goodness, yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
There's a lot
you
of
know.
there's a lot of misunderstanding with symbolism as well. With we were talking about the Vatican, but Saint Peter, was crucified upside down. People take it and they make all kinds of stories with that. The reason why he was crucified upside down was because he didn't feel worthy of Jesus Christ.
That's right.
And
that's
asked
it.
to be crucified upside down.
Yes.
And I'm like,
and that's
stop making it something that it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Here's a comment from Dolly that Amelia can get, and then I've got a
Yeah.
question pertaining to it, please.
Okay. Dolly says, we have all lived all over the universe.
I agree, Dolly.
Okay. Hence the question: have you regressed anyone who has said to you, "No, I have a life here"? Because I'm totally on board with yes, we can reincarnate anywhere. It doesn't have to be back here. Have you encountered anyone who's like, "No, I'm from out this way"?
Oh, all the time.
Wow,
I mean,
beautiful.
that happens.
Right.
That happens all the time. It's just like
Beautiful.
what we were talking about before,
The
you know,
line.
and people will recall their home world or where they spent significant lifetimes, and they will be homesick, and they will even remember their pets, and they will just and sob. So yes, it is. It's not imagination.
And it's
These
not a
are
time as much as it is a place.
yes.
I
yes.
love that.
It's not so
always,
much
where
a
did it
time as
all
a
begin?
place.
It's
Yeah.
always that question. Where did it all begin?
Well, you know, there's the scientists like the theory of panspermia right now, that all kinds of DNA was in microscopic life that, you know, hit the planet through meteor crashes. But myself personally, I think it's a lot more involved in that. I think probably the highest form of life, I mean, humanoid type life that was natural would have been Neanderthal or the Denisovans or something
Yes.
along those
Yes.
lines. But the emergence of Cro-Magnon man was overnight.
Yes.
It was overnight. And the Cro-Magnon man, even though you know, the behaviors would probably be different, it would mix right in with us. I mean, there wouldn't be anything that would be odd about the way that being is constructed.
Right.
So that happened overnight. There is a true, you know, there's a whole missing link thing that is for sure a valid point. There's a big chunk of evolution that is missing.
Out of
Now,
this world intervention, I'm thinking.
yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think that the Sasquatch beings, the Yeti, all of the rest of those cryptids are very special beings who may even
Dimensional?
be interdimensional
Yeah.
themselves.
Yes.
I mean, too many people have seen them beamed down out of spaceships and beamed up, and
Portals, even just in and out of
portals.
portals.
Yep.
Just, that makes
Yep.
so much sense to me.
Yep. Yep.
We're going to take a quick break. Station and
Since
sponsor
we're doing
ID,
station
please.
IDs, right? I know
They
we had a
are.
discussion, but I didn't know if it was
Absolutely.
just making sure. This is what happens when you miss some shows. You just really lose your dingling. Anyways, you are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano, coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 107.7 FM, as well as 105.3. That's the Gulf Coast, Michelle. I have to change that. As well as on the Roku channel. Our returning guest tonight is our I was going to say our girlfriend.
But that's all right.
Great friend. Yes, because it feels like a girl's night, sitting here and talking. The three of us are a lot of trouble. Just saying. And the topic of we have Lesley Mitchell-Clarke with us tonight, and we love and adore her. She's close to home and always in our hearts, and everything she shares with us is so amazing. We just love having her. Tonight we're discussing different extraterrestrial races, as well as her hypnotherapy practice and past life regression. Pardon me, I am tongue-tied and too much salt at dinner. If you are just tuning in, no worries, because you can stream our archives on any platform that you normally use. Remember to click like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And don't forget to share us with your friends and family. Start by searching United Public Radio and then The Outer Realm. A huge thank you to the wonderful people at Folgers Coffee for your continued support in sponsoring our show day one and continuing. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Our fabulous banner and promo media. Thank you to Steve McGinnis, who is a horror illustrator. He's a fantastic artist, and he creates commission pieces as well. So check him out on Facebook and social media. And next, I'm losing it. Sorry. Loving our intro. Sometimes we can't get that outro in because our show goes in for a little bit past the point. Shh. But thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon. Justin Snicker is an award-winning composer, vocalist, and musician. You can find his music on Amazon and Bandcamp. Stream him on any platform that you use. You can find Dr. Snick on Facebook and Instagram. And as I've been mentioning the last couple months, you can use his music in your stories on social media now, which is really cool. But he posts some really cool little video clips with his music if you follow him on Instagram. If you don't, you should be. Now, if you're watching us on Facebook Live or YouTube, make sure to take that cursor over, move that little arrow, and hit like and subscribe. And don't forget to share us with your friends and family.
Then we're back.
All right.
It's a long one. It's a long one. Especially when you've missed 2 weeks. It's like,
I know. Somebody's been slacking off, taking 2 weeks.
yeah, it's like, and then I had too much salt at dinner, and like your mouth, you know what that, like, you can't eat heavy and then speak.
No.
On a microphone.
Indeed. Well, I was talking about somebody about the way we ate in the 50s, and the way, speaking of salt, the way like my mother cooked. My mother, God bless her, she really believed that frozen vegetables were better for you than fresh ones because they got them right at the right time.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
And I'd say, "Oh, but Mom, these things, they just taste like shit." She said, "That's okay. Let me get some more MSG." You know?
Right. But that was the thing, and that was before there were any restrictions on things and
no awareness, really.
Well, there really still isn't, because people are like so about Himalayan salt, but yet don't look to see how that fits into your diet. Because if you're on certain chemicals, medication, the chemicals in the minerals in Himalayan salt can it's not going to work.
Well, things can be contraindicated. That's right.
Yeah, thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
See, we're girlfriends.
I thought that might have been the word. I thought that might have been
I'm
the
like,
word.
Concha, come on, spit it out. No coffee today and too much salt.
Wayne said he's going to go make toast now.
Wayne's
Okay, Wayne, go ahead.
Toast.
Horror, not a horror illustrator. Horror. I'm pretty sure I said horror.
In New York, we say a horror show.
Yeah.
Right.
I
right.
got family there.
So, okay, let's talk. This is what I've been mentioning to, some of my more versed friends and more versed guests. Project Bluebeam. Project Bluebeam.
Blue Book or Blue Beam?
No, Bluebeam.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay. Well, we get to educate you a little bit then.
Good.
Well,
good,
this
good,
is,
good.
just because we've been on the topic of whistleblowers and such, and Project Bluebeam is what they, military and government are going to come in to give false flags. And that's what they call it.
Oh, wow.
False flags.
I believe that has happened, and I know that Randy Kramer told me that there's been quite a bit of that in this past recent time, where there's been a lot of false flag bullshit and a lot of stuff that just was sorry, beep, retro. That's a retro beep.
You're fine.
Retro beep. Anyway, but yeah, I think that I think that that's generated. They love to use. I hate to say this about the government, but any controlling body loves to use fear. They love to use fear, and even in the Catholic Church, oh my God, that was all. That was heavily about fear, as I remember.
Well, we even have the saying Catholic guilt. I mean, all of us.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it was something else, and limbo's even gone. How about that? As a kid,
oh my God,
you go to catechism, and I was always terrified. There's this idea of limbo about unbaptized babies floating in space. I mean, it just made me nuts.
And purgatory.
Well, they still got purgatory, I think, but limbo's
gone. Yeah, I had purgatory.
Gone. gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we have
But
to
yeah.
start looking at things a little more realistically
Mhm.
now, but yeah, I think we're going to start seeing signs of that, a divide and conquer,
I
sort of,
do. Yeah.
if you have to disclose and you're fighting it, and everybody's got a camera phone now. You can only hide so much
You
because
can
people are
only hide
walking
so
around
much.
catching all sorts of things. So
Yeah, no kidding.
if you
And
can't beat them, join them, I say. But
that's right. Get your phone out. But you know what is something that is a positive thing to think about here, and even in our dark, dangerous times,
Mm,
the ETs, the benevolent ETs, are not going to tolerate a nuclear explosion.
no.
It rips space time. It is a pollution for everybody,
Mm,
and they just won't let it happen. There's they've been turning off nukes right and left all the
mm,
time.
mhm,
And what does concern me a little bit is the whole American Midwest, and also our Midwest up here in Canada is loaded with old silos that are disintegrating that have nuclear weapons inside of them.
mhm,
That's what they did. That they stashed all those locations along the dew line, which
mhm,
was all those bases along the dew line, which brings me to kind of an interesting point about how many experiencers actually come from military families, and military families that traveled or that were stationed on the
mhm.
dew line or one of these, hotspots, I would have to
Right.
say. But
Not
there's
sorry,
ha
not from like people who like just because their cousin was at the Pentagon kind of thing doesn't mean
no,
military.
no. What I'm talking about is
Yeah.
probably not somebody from somebody with a medium level a father, like Jesse Marcel or something. And
Yeah.
it's and usually traveling is involved, but there's a very high percentage of of m- people who grew up in military families who are experiencers.
Mhm,
And I have to wonder, why is that? Are they are the parents somehow offering them up for approved contacts? Or have they been what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Sort of groomed and discovered as being psychically talented, and then
do you think
integrated.
that they would be more apt to be military abductees? Not that they're not having experience, or um, not that they're not having genuine extraterrestrial experiences. I think it's like anything else. The military's job is to, well, we want to know what you experienced.
Oh
We
yeah.
want in on this. You're our people, and if this is happening to you, then we've got the right to go in there and figure this out. You work for us, or
Yes,
this is your
but
family. You know.
yeah. Well, I think there are some tasking things that I hear over and over again,
Mm,
and one of them being that there is, right now as we speak, there is a Mars Defense Force and there is a Lunar Defense Force.
hmm,
And there are bases on both planetoids, or planets if you wish.
mhm,
A lot of it is underground. And on Mars, they are also sharing the planet with several different varieties of reptoids who
hmm,
live primarily underground. Now, most of them, there are treaties, but there still are
hmm,
little forays and conflagrations that go on
mhm.
between indigenous. I believe they're indigenous. They live underground, the indigenous
As they
reptilian
do
beings,
here.
as they do here. So
Right.
I
Okay.
think that that's something that I hear about. I've heard about combat
Mhm,
with these reptilians. I've heard about how they are psionic experts. In other words,
mm,
there might only be 30 of them coming out of a craft, but yet they are able to use their psionic technique to make
right.
us think there are 5,000 of them.
Right.
That's so they have those skills together. And the something interesting that well, actually Randy Kramer told me this, but I've heard it also another place, is before combat happens, and say you're assigned to the Mars Defense Force and you're putting on your gear,
Mm,
the suit itself releases some kind of ridiculous what's the word I'm looking for, like amphetamine like blast of different stuff.
crazy.
So when you're out there, shooting those reptilians, you're high as a bat.
Jesus.
So, they are amphetamine like compounds and other
Mhm.
stuff, and it gets in the suit and it goes right into your system, and then you go out and fight.
So,
Mhm.
question. These are coming from people who have like clients? Like some
Yeah.
of these are
Yeah.
so my question is, could it be, and because again, I don't go under like most people. If I do, I sure in hell don't know about it. Anyway, but could it be implanted memories? Or is it a genuine memory? How can you tell the difference? I guess is where I'm going with it.
Well, we usually can get both. In other
Okay.
words, if something has been suppressed and replaced, we
Mhm.
call it a screen memory, and
Okay.
I can get the client to allow it to dissolve.
Okay.
So if I think
To bring the
that's
real
what's happening,
memory forward.
yes, if I
Got it.
think that's what happened, but for that I kind of have to rely on just my gut feeling.
Right.
And then I
Right.
will ask the client if, are you ready to just make that dissolve? Because they'll always say, well, it doesn't look quite real. I'm not sure if it's real. So when I
Right.
get that kind of thing happening, I move ahead and
So they know.
they know.
Once they're under, they know.
Yes, when
If
they're
it's a
under However, if they just are operating from consciously recalled memories,
right.
they probably won't know the difference.
Right.
The screen memory will probably be dominant. We
Right.
have to go in there and dissolve it and blast it. Like I said, there are no memory blocks that will last forever. You just have to know how to
How
go in there and get rid of them.
Right.
Really?
And
Michaela feels like what? Poor
No, I'm
Bubbles.
impressed.
Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I'm
What?
impressed by that there is no memory block that they can leave in place.
I
As I
don't
said,
believe
really,
they
I think
can.
that's fantastic.
I don't believe it. I haven't seen it
Good.
yet. I don't believe it. As I said
Mm.
earlier, the only thing that stops the recovery of memories is fear.
Mm.
And if that's in place, I
Mhm.
will work with the person with benign hypnosis, just relaxation techniques until I can get them where they
Right.
will be able to go through the experience.
That's wonderful because
You
so
know,
many people suffer
Mm.
because of that,
Mhm.
what they can't remember and they don't
Yeah.
understand why they're
Well, they can
reacting
But
get
if you
a
frustrated.
certain way.
And
Yeah.
if you believe you're remembering one thing, it's totally false. Like, do
Mhm.
you run across that a lot, or is that like a
Well, I've heard some, disturbing things, especially if they come from the time period
yeah.
where sperm and ova are being harvested. If we're going back a little ways, so someone would have to be probably about my age to have,
Mm.
experienced things in that time period. But there are some things where, I know it's happened with men where they think they're having sex with a woman and it's all created, and they come to consciousness and there's just some kind of machine on them extracting sperm.
Right.
And that is a shock. That
The
those
shock.
kinds of things, I really have to handle them carefully.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. I mean, and
Yeah.
they will use Jedi mind tricks,
Right.
to make something that's unpalatable to seem perfectly okay. And
Mhm.
they in this kind of era where they were harvesting stuff and doing stuff, there was a lot of sexual screen memories that were used to
Mhm.
make people do what they wanted them to do.
Question.
Oh, glasses.
Bubbles. Chop, chop, Bubbles. Come on.
Dolly says, I just took them off for a second. Dolly says, Lesley, have you had contact?
Well, I can't say that I'm a person who has been on craft and had experiences of that type. However, I have had visual experiences that were quite startling. And a lot of that began, it may have occurred in my childhood too, but I haven't explored myself in that way. But I was working as an actor. I'm actor and singer too. I was working as an actor at a summer stock theater, and one of the gals who was in the company with me, we got to be really good friends. And at the time, I thought she was terrifically old and savvy, and and I'm sure now she probably was not even 30, right? So, but that's
Very
at that time I
funny.
thought, oh, isn't she exotic? So,
I
so
like
we
that, exotic.
exotic. She
That's
was
nice.
fantastic. So we hung out a lot, and eventually, we would. This was in where the Rushmore heads are. This was in Rushmore State Park in South Dakota. So it was a summer theater there, very popular. It's still there. So she would drive me. We'd go into town together because I didn't have a car, of course, and our little town was Custer, South Dakota. So we go in there, and I was noticing that every time, we left the campus, as it were, it looked like, what first I thought it was like low flying airplanes, but remember, all of that area there is land of the Lakota Sioux, and there's a no fly zone.
Mhm.
Oh,
There couldn't be, and it was
right.
silent. I
Mhm.
thought, well, what kind
Wow.
of, it looked like helicopters maybe, but they would come close and then go so fast, far away. And so finally, she says, our finally it was just too much. I asked her about it. She says, well, I'm going to tell you the truth. My Yes, I'm a singer and I work in Vegas and blah blah blah, but my main thing that I do is I work for the government, and I work in a program where they fly me to one of the bases in the desert, and I communicate psychically with grays.
Hmm.
And there's a whole room full of us, and she gets up in the morning and gets on a plane, you know, totally plane wrap, gets on the mystery plane, and they would take her out to, Dreamland or one of the bases out there in the desert. And what she told me was that she was exhausted from doing it because the ETs never stopped. They wanted to communicate all the time, and she couldn't take it anymore. She didn't want it. She didn't want the secret. She didn't want any of it. So she said, basically, I quit. And then she came. She thought she had escaped. She came to do summer theater in South Dakota, and they just followed her.
Of course.
And the other short little story about that is that one afternoon. Um, I was hanging out at the snack bar. I did that really well. I was hanging out at the snack bar, and it happened to be right
The
across.
snack bar. They don't even call them that anymore. I
No,
love
but
it.
it was,
I
and
love the
it was
snack
a
bar.
classic snack bar, and
A good one.
it was right across the way from her little dorm room, right? So there's nobody in this area, and this is a company of like 300 people.
Hmm.
And there's nobody there but me, and I see this like latter day kind of town car, but out of time, like too old. This is 1973, and it looks like a 1960s town car with even,
Hmm.
I think it had maybe the wings in the back. You know what I mean? It was completely out of time, out of date. So it sped around in front of the theater and pulled up in front of my friend's space. And these two men got out, and they were dressed like George Raft in the 1940s. They were wearing the shoulder pads, they were wearing 1940s type suits, except that their pants were really short, and it looked like they were wearing orthopedic shoes. Like they were really heavy, and I could see their skin. I wasn't very far away, maybe 15 feet or 20 feet, and the skin looked plastic. I can't describe it any other way, like a doll
Hmm.
face. It
I
didn't
was.
look like real skin.
Oh.
So
Interesting.
they just marched right into where she was. And I thought, and then I came back to sanity, and I said, beep. These two guys just went in there, and I got to do something. I don't know what I was going to do. Beat them with my tuna sandwich. I don't know what I was going to do.
Wow.
But
I'll show you.
yeah, I'll show
Oh
you.
my gosh. I
Right.
feel
Don't
so
mess
old
with
right
us.
now. Between the tuna sandwich and the snack bar in the same conversation, I feel so
Yeah.
old.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, just as I was about to make my big move, these two guys came out, got back in the car, and pulled out, like really fast, leaving a big dust thing, behind them. And after I pulled myself together, I went in and I said, what the bit was that? And she said, well, they are not accepting that I don't want to do this work anymore, and they came to put pressure on me.
Well, I mean, she's lucky that she just wasn't taken. One does not just, I would imagine, walk away from that sort of a project when you're not supposed to know about it.
I
or
wonder,
care
yes, I
about
mean,
it.
I think it was collaborative, so there was some government responsibility. I think they were, reluctant to do anything stronger than that. And they did have a room full of people. God
Right.
knows how many people were actually doing this.
Right.
I'm
Right.
just
She's,
dying at Wayne's comment.
they could have had people everywhere at every base
Right.
involved in telepathic communication.
Mhm.
They could have
Yes.
been,
It's
you know.
crazy.
So
It's
I
crazy.
lost touch with her, and I tried to find her a few years ago, and I was not successful. But I often wonder, I often wonder if she was able to leave that, and
Right. Right.
so
That's interesting. So yeah, it's very cool. What a sighting that would be. Wayne says, so they
so
look like Mark Zuckerberg.
That's why I was
yeah,
laughing when you were
they
talking.
did. They looked about as healthy as Mark
Right?
Zuckerberg.
You
Yeah.
think with all that money, you
They
could like do
did.
something about that color.
And that hair. What's with that
Yeah.
hair?
But his
Pants.
clothes are expensive. His clothes are really expensive, but they're like quiet luxury. And all he wears is the same t-shirt every single day.
Yeah.
But they say
No,
it
I
has
think
something to do with that type of IQ. Because it's
I think
easy
he's
for
on
them.
he's on the spectrum. Are you kidding? He's on the spectrum.
Right.
He is.
And he's choked.
There's so much that we don't know. It's a whole other show.
That's a
We should do a conspiracy show.
well,
Yeah,
that's one hell of a
that's right.
conversation because if you've watched the film and the story, he didn't come up with the concept. He just put it out there.
Yeah,
I
that's
know.
right. That's
He
I
right.
stole it like a lot
That's
of good
right.
things.
We
For
are,
those, yes, he did.
Yeah.
we are already like up at the top of the hour. Gosh, where did the time go? I know. That's okay. We'll just do it
Oh
again.
my.
We'll just do it again
Okay.
sometime.
Well,
You
I
know.
hope that I feel like we talked about some really interesting stuff, and
Yeah, it was
I
great.
love to talk about this stuff. I'll answer any question that comes up, even if I don't know, I'm going to tell you I don't know.
Right.
Honest to God. And if anyone out there would like to reach out to me, you can do that through my website very easily, which
Right.
is Lesley, Lesley. It's the female spelling. Don't misgender me. Lesley.
I love you.
It's in the show description as well.
Okay, there it is. I can't get
Right.
through. At lightworkhypnosis.com, there's a little thing to fill out, and even if it's just a question, and if you feel like you've had experiences, I mean, I'm really, really happy to talk to you. And these days, if it's something you want to explore, we can work together on Zoom. You wouldn't think it works as beautifully as it does, but I got to tell you, it does. So
Oh yeah.
it's
I
an
love
option.
I love it. I love
Makes
it.
it more accessible.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for
Oh,
joining us. It was always
Yes.
such a pleasure
thank
when
you,
you join
ladies.
us.
You're
I'm
like
so
our
thrilled to
third
be here.
host. You fit in so well.
Well,
And
thank you.
you always amaze me. Thank you for your time.
Well, it's my pleasure. And I just want to put it out there that myself and some wonderful colleagues, we are putting on what is going to be called the Contact and Disclosure Symposium in Toronto
Ooh.
on April 20th. And we're having it at a fabulous place. It's a
This
club called
April.
off-world bar.
I love it.
This
And
I love
April.
it.
this April, and it's just going to be a one-day event with speakers, but we're getting our feet wet. You know, we did have a wonderful convention in Toronto, but it just things didn't work
Yeah.
out, and
Right.
MoveOn couldn't support it anymore. So we're doing our own thing.
Good.
And Michelle, I'm going to ask you if you will come and speak because it's in your neck of the woods. You think
Well,
about it, okay? I would
I will.
love to have you on the
I
roster, and you
will.
can talk about whatever it is you would like to talk about from your vast experience and work. And
Thank you.
Send us all that
let me know.
information and I'll put it on the group page
Oh, I will. I will.
for the
I'm just about to.
symposium.
I'm just about to. You know, I haven't even done the press announcement yet, so I'm just
Okay.
about to do the ticketing, and I'll send you everything. We'll do
That
a
would be
nice.
great because then I can promote it on our different pages as
Aw,
well for you.
that would be
Because it's not
fantastic.
often that they come this way, so it's very interesting. And
Yeah.
it's exciting that you're doing that. I think that's great.
Gotta do it, man. You're waiting for somebody else to come up with the money and do this, that, and the other. Forget it. I don't have
No.
the patience for that. I'm from New York City. We don't roll that way. You know,
I
I
want
can
it
actually roll.
now.
I can actually roll with two hands. You know, that's what a gift.
Naughty
I
Leslie.
love you
Naughty
so
Leslie.
much. And I love
That's
your
a whole
hair
other
like
show
that.
too.
Thank you.
I love you.
Thank
All
you,
right,
guys. I
darling.
love you too. You
Love
guys
you
have a
too.
great rest of the evening, and thank you so much again for welcoming me, and I look forward to our next hang.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, it'll
I'll
be
be in
fun.
touch.
Wow,
All
I love
right.
you.
Bye.
Have a good
Fantastic. Love you
night.
guys.
Love you
Bye
too.
bye
Good
now.
night.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Well, that was
Oh.
a great show. She's such a delight. So much fun, even with all the bleeps, because you know the
She's bleeping
censorship thing.
herself.
I know she's bleeping herself. It's
Sorry.
hilarious. But big thank you to Lesley Mitchell-Clarke. She's just fantastic. And anybody like throughout Southern Ontario, go check her out. She sings and she goes to a lot of different events where you can catch her. She's just really delightful. So big thank you to her. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee for sponsoring the show. And big thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, Justin Snicker, and Steve McGinnis. We appreciate you all so very much. Tomorrow night, we're doing something a little bit different. You know, we've not really tackled anything like this per se to this, you know, this extreme. But Jack Roth, and I've been really looking forward to this, and I know this is going to be right up Amelia's alley.
A little.
He's going to be discussing his book, Killing Kennedy, exposing the plot, the cover-up, and the consequences. I know. Amelia's like, yeah, let me add him. I'm just going to go around for the ride.
I'm always interested in everybody's theory and what
Exactly.
they find. Yeah.
Exactly. So tune in. And thank you for tuning in tonight. You guys make it so much fun, and we appreciate you all so very much. Have a good evening. We'll see you tomorrow.